Okay, this is the inside of the K2 you see there. The controller. Disconnected all the cables. See the gecko drive there. Kind of make out what the this isn't still perfect even in flower mode on this camera, but the power supply they have on it's pretty simple from the looks of it. Let's see what they're doing here. They got their power input lines coming out. The primary. I got a bridge rectifier over there. So I definitely turn this into a filtered DC output of unknown voltage. 10,000 microfarad, 35 volt cap, so, maybe I ought to measure the voltage on this thing. I wonder how they got those, I wonder if those in parallel or not. Okay. Flip multimeter, volts DC. But as you can see, the gecko, I got it hooked to power, the gecko lights on and the green LEDs on the outside. Anyway, yeah, it's 32.9, so it's 33 volts. Boy, they're really running that close to those capacitors' maximum rating. Of course, that may get pulled down a little bit when the thing's active. But the gecko drive's pretty simple. I mean, they just got, a step and a direction pin and a common. That basically controls it. Let me go ahead and turn this thing off. I don't think I turn the light on. So that's how the connections go in case I unplug this and forget. So anyway, but it's tempting to measure because I don't know what, without taking this board out, I don't know what that TO220 IC is, but whatever it is, it could be a transistor or it could be a regulator. If it's a regulator, it's dead. So, because there's nothing coming out of it, it's like making a less than 1 volt reading across the pins. The center pin, normally is ground, and the right-hand side output is almost always output. Right-hand side pin. I don't get any kind of reading on that at all. But I know I've measured 5 volts across this thing before at some point, but I don't know when it was. I don't know still yet what CPU that is, or what these other chips are. Again, without pulling the board, it's hard to really tell. If there is a regulator, they got 2 electrolytic capacitors right outside of that. If there's going to be a regulator, that's probably the regulator. They didn't really have any bypass capacitors or anything on this. I mean, it's technically not strictly needed, but still good practice to have them. But yeah, I don't know what exactly they're doing with this without pulling this board and, those pins are in the right place. I know because I cycled all these connectors. It's one of the first things I did, and I just did it again recently. Because sometimes you can have oxide build up on the contacts, and they'll, like my shop bot, I always have to frickin' go in and cycle the connectors on the damn thing before I can use it. Because I guess I used really cheap connectors or something that have corroded a bit. It's really just an oxide film if they're not breaking through it. They don't. You got to cycle the connectors to break through it. So mechanical action tends to, carve a hole in it. Well, I'm gonna have to take this thing apart and take a closer look at it, I suppose. So I'll go ahead and stop the recording. Okay, I'm testing. I took the board out to take a close look at it to see if there was a regulator or whatever, but apparently they're powering the device off the parallel port. There's a regulator, but they don't use it. Which they couldn't hook it directly to this power supply without a ballast resistor of some kind in the way anyway, because it would melt the thing. Those regulators really can't handle voltages that well. I got it hooked to a pulse generator here, and I successfully moved the Z-axis with it. It's a little quirky getting this thing to respond though. Okay, you can see there, I got my pulse generator on. I don't know which axis that is. Let's see, it's the Y-axis pulse generator. I'm about to run out of room here, so I'm going to turn it way down. I mean, you can't really see it, but it is moving. Then I'm going to turn it off before it runs out of room. This will be the X-axis. Okay, and I don't know if you can see that, but it is spinning. This is going in a good direction. I can actually... So again, all three Gecko drives are functional on this. Again, I kind of peeled back the sticker on that chip partially, and unfortunately it's a damn Atmel, so I've worked a little with them, but not a lot. And you know, I noticed it has a 244. It almost looks like they're passing signals directly from the 244 to the directly to the Gecko drive. So at least it looks that way from what I can tell on the circuit board traces. But like I said, you know, this button here, you know, see the flashing reset? That is the only thing that works. And I have tried changing the port addresses, you know, which are, you know, before I took this thing apart, you know, which are right here. And that is the valid port address. And if I try setting it to something else, like using this port, which originally had a different value in there, you know, it won't respond. I mean, that little, that panic button there won't do anything, but it does work, you know, when you have the port set right. And that's worked with every computer I tried, but it's the only thing that works. And I did get 5 volts on that power supply when because what I did was I took a little board out and actually hooked it directly to the parallel port and the ground, and I got a good clean 5 volt power signature from it. So, you know, that appears correct. This is the first this has moved in about a year. I hate to have to do it this way though. This is pretty slow. But anyway, that proves the Gecko drives themselves are not the problem. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this thing off before it does something unexpected. But the Gecko drives themselves are not the problem. You know, they all work. All 3 of them I've tested. Again, I've also tested the motor windings, but, you know, clearly they work. All the motors are fine. But I've also tested the limit switches. You know, I did this before, you know, a few weeks ago. But they work. Okay, and so that kind of clears this power supply. I guess those capacitors are still in good enough shape for now. But the Gecko drives work. Transformer's fine. Bridge rectifier's obviously fine. The only thing it could be is some problem on our good old circuit board. Which, in case you're wondering, these are the kinds of things I build. I guess I can show you real quick, maybe. But I almost exclusively use picks. Those are some of the electronics that I've done. Oops. So, I do know a thing or two about this sort of stuff. But anyway, at the end of the day, you know, our little board here, you know, I had to take it so I can put it under my mag lamp because I got terrible eyes, I can't see anything. Well, I said it's version, 1.26, I think it says. I think this is still in flyer mode. But like I said, that's a 244. That's a 7414, basically. And, these capacitors are, again, not the best choice for this sort of thing. But then again, they probably need it for powering it off the parallel port. But that is a regulator, but they're not using it. This is probably some sort of FET. I don't know. I haven't identified it yet. But it looks like it controls the direction on each of the motors. So that's one of the reasons I've always wondered this. Why, if these drives work the way they do, why do I get that thump when when the thing works properly? Why does it thump when you turn it on? Well, I think it has something to do with this. I think that actually controls, because the direction controls, from what I understand, the common on the Gecko drives needs to be a positive. So that's probably what enables them, is when they get a positive signal in that common line. That probably makes them engage the motors, is my theory anyway. Again, but this is an Atmel MPU, so I am still not quite sure without tracing all the damn circuits and everything. I don't really have any intention or interest in doing that. But there's a possibility it could have been this chip, because this may have been hit by some kind of storm surge. Because again, I stopped using the K2 about the middle of last year, about last June of 2013. And then I had some more work to do on it in May, not May, but September, I think it was, late August, early September. And the thing just didn't work anymore. But the in between those two times, there had been a storm. In fact, the power was out over here for about a week due to some kind of storm. I'm thinking maybe, especially if they power this thing through the parallel port, maybe some kind of power surge came through that PC. And it could be because that PC was acting kind of funny. It was on. It wasn't supposed to be on, but it was on. And, I didn't know what to make of it. So, so like I said, the thing probably, might have gotten screwed up during some storm. I mean, some kind of surge came through here. I mean, it fry these processors. Supposedly Atmels aren't as hardy as Pixar when it comes to withstanding things like that. I don't know for sure, but something like that could have happened. It could have fried actually all these chips. I mean, this is not, that Atmel is probably $2 part. These are, doggone it, these chips here are 50-cent parts. I mean, this is not a very expensive circuit board if you buy it from the right place. I mean, this has got, circuit board and everything, about $10 worth of parts in, and 10 unit volumes. Well, maybe 12 with the connectors and everything. But anyway, it's not a very expensive part. And it may turn out to be just this Atmel that's fried. I mean, that's possible, but I don't know. I mean, the whole thing could be fried. I mean, again, without me getting into it, I'd have to, go in and, try to develop schematics off this thing or what have you. But that would be a big mess, and I just really, I just want a working machine. I mean, seriously, I don't want to have to spend a week or two trying to figure this thing out. At the end of the day, but this is the board that's at fault. I just don't know why they didn't put any kind of LED indicators or something on this, although it makes a little sense given the fact they got it powered off the parallel port. That's, a little unconventional, but, I mean, it can be done, but still, having some kind of indicators or something so that this thing's communicating, because they obviously didn't, I mean, I don't, again, know exactly how they did this. This 244, again, seems to be there for actually sending signals directly to the Gecko drives, just from some of the traces I've followed on this. It seems like it's, that they might be using it for that purpose, which means they're not even going through this processor. This CPU may not even be aware of whether data is coming through it or not, for all I know. But the fact of the matter is that, hell, it would have been nice having some kind of indicators on this so whether, signals are coming from that, and making it over here or not. You just don't know. I mean, LEDs aren't that expensive, but this green LED doesn't tell me anything. You look like I got the brain pulled out of it. It's still lit. So, I mean, it doesn't really tell you anything. So I'm sure they've improved it in the last 8 years, but I mean, I know they were probably fairly new into this at the time they got into it, K2 was, but still, anyway, well, but that's verification that this drive works. At least the drives work, and that's good because those seem to be rather expensive. But this seems to be the culprit right here. It'd be nice if I could just send them this damn thing and have them replace it, because that seems to be the culprit. So like I said, in theory, certainly doesn't cost that much, but I don't know if they have any of these left over from 8 years ago. That's the thing. So, I hate to have to reverse engineer this thing, but, certainly not going to dish out too much money for this, because that's out of my budget right now. Anyway, okay, now I've reassembled the thing. The Gecko drives are lit, our LEDs are on, and everything's connected properly, nice and dandy. See, I've got the machine on, and here's what happens when I try to do it. Nothing's happening. But notice the little reset button. I'll try to pull this over here. Now I'll punch that. Voila! It's the only thing that works. And it's worked like this in the other 3 computers I've had this installed on. It's the only thing it does. I know the parallel port works because I took this oscilloscope up to it, which is a parallel port oscilloscope, into all computers, just to verify the ports work. So again, I know the address is right because it wouldn't do this if the address weren't right. But again, no control. So I'm going to put the cover on later, but I hope I can just send them that board, because I know the rest of this thing works. The only thing that seems to be the problem is that. So anyway, maybe it was a bad solder joint on that parallel port connector or something, who knows. Didn't think to inspect it. But